The security guard looked at me the way people look at someone who clearly doesn't belong. Not hostile. Just certain. He stood beneath the gold-lit canopy of the Whitmore Grand Hotel, one hand resting on a leather guest list folder, the other loosely holding a radio. Black cars pulled up behind me in a slow, steady line. Valets opened doors. Women stepped out in silk dresses. Men adjusted cufflinks under the chandelier light spilling from the lobby. Laughter drifted through the glass doors. Inside, my sister's engagement party had already started. The guard glanced at my coat, then at my shoes. Not expensive enough, apparently. His eyes returned to the list. Name, he asked. Emily Carter. His finger moved down the page. Once. Twice. Then he stopped. A pause. Another scan. Finally he closed the folder halfway. Guests only, he said politely. Staff entrance is around the back. He pointed toward the service alley beside the building. For a moment I said nothing. Behind me, a dark Bentley rolled to a stop. The valet rushed forward immediately. The guard stepped past me without another glance. Good evening, Mr. Whitmore, he said warmly to the man stepping out of the car. Daniel's father. Robert Whitmore didn't look at me either. He walked straight inside with his wife, Helen, her diamonds catching the lobby light as the doors opened. The guard turned back to me like the conversation had already ended. Service entrance, he repeated. I followed his gesture. A narrow alley between buildings. Metal doors. Fluorescent lights humming over stacked delivery crates. I nodded once. Of course. I walked toward the alley. He never asked why my name was on the guest list. He never asked why I looked familiar. People rarely question their assumptions when they feel confident about them. The service corridor smelled like steam and industrial cleaner. Kitchen staff moved quickly past metal carts stacked with champagne flutes. Someone shouted about the dessert station being late. A young hostess at a folding table looked up. Vendor, she asked. Something like that, I said. She slid a clipboard toward me. Sign in here. I didn't. I just kept walking. No one stopped me. In places like this, confidence is often mistaken for authority. And I had spent years learning how to move through rooms without being noticed. I was 32 years old. I worked in asset acquisitions and hospitality investments. At least, that's what my business card said. My sister Olivia preferred a simpler description when she mentioned me to people. She does numbers. It always sounded vaguely disappointing. Olivia was 3 years older than me. Growing up, she had been the center of every room. Teachers remembered her. Neighbors complimented her. Boys followed her around like satellites. I was quieter. My parents used to say I had a practical mind. Which is a polite way of saying I wasn't the interesting one. Olivia went to Columbia. She studied communications. She learned how to network in rooms full of wealthy people who liked confident smiles and easy conversations. I studied finance at a smaller university 2 hours away. While Olivia was going to rooftop parties in Manhattan, I was reading hotel acquisition contracts and debt restructuring reports. We didn't talk much during those years. Not because we fought. Just because our lives had very little overlap. Olivia liked attention. I preferred information. When our father died 5 years ago, the distance between us became more noticeable. He left Olivia the house. He left me his investment portfolio. At the time my mother said it seemed fair. Olivia needed stability. I had always been good with money. The portfolio included a few small properties. A struggling motel chain in Nevada. A handful of commercial leases. Nothing impressive. But numbers have a way of growing if you're patient. Especially when you notice things other people ignore. 2 years ago, the Whitmore family quietly listed one of their hotels during a complicated corporate restructuring. They didn't advertise it publicly. They assumed only major investment groups would notice. But I had been watching their debt structure for months. The purchase happened through 3 holding companies and a silent partner agreement. No press releases. No announcements. Just paperwork. Lots of paperwork. Olivia never asked what I did for work. And I never explained. The corridor opened into the ballroom service area. Through the swinging doors I could hear music now. A string quartet. Champagne glasses clinking. Someone laughing loudly. I paused near the doorway and looked inside. The ballroom looked exactly the way Olivia would want it to. White roses everywhere. Soft gold lighting. Crystal centerpieces reflecting the chandeliers above. A massive banner hung near the stage. Congratulations, Olivia and Daniel. Guests filled the room in clusters of tailored suits and evening gowns. Waiters moved between tables with trays of champagne. Daniel stood near the center beside my sister. He was tall. Polished. The kind of man who had never needed to doubt his place in the world. His father, Robert Whitmore, stood beside him speaking with 2 investors. My sister looked radiant. Her dress was ivory silk. Her hair pinned perfectly. Her smile wide and practiced as guests congratulated her. She laughed at something Daniel whispered. Then she glanced across the room. Her eyes passed over me. And kept moving. No reaction. I didn't wave. I didn't step forward. I just watched. A waiter brushed past me and stopped suddenly. Careful, he said, frowning slightly. Staff shouldn't block the entrance. I'm not blocking it, I said calmly. He gestured toward the service corridor. Then you should probably stand back there. I nodded slightly. I'll keep that in mind. He hurried away. Across the room, Olivia clinked her glass gently with a spoon. The room quieted. Daniel wrapped an arm around her waist. I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight, Olivia said, smiling brightly. Her voice carried easily through the microphone. This night means everything to us. Guests applauded softly. I leaned against the wall near the service door. Invisible. Comfortably invisible. It had been that way most of my life. At family gatherings, Olivia told stories about vacations and social events. I listened. When people asked about my work, the conversation usually ended quickly. Hospitality investment didn't sound exciting. Until it was. A woman near the bar noticed me watching the speeches. She frowned slightly and walked over. Tall. Expensive dress. Diamond bracelet. Excuse me, she said quietly but firmly. Staff shouldn't stand in the guest area. Her tone carried the kind of confidence that comes from never being questioned. I'm just listening, I said. She tilted her head toward the kitchen. You can listen from the hallway. I looked at her. Then I nodded. Of course. But I didn't move. Across the room, Daniel lifted a glass of champagne. To family, he said. Guests echoed the toast. My sister leaned into him, smiling for the cameras. I watched quietly. Because moments like this reveal people more clearly than almost anything else. Who they notice. Who they ignore. And who they believe has the right to stand in a room. Behind me, a radio crackled suddenly. Ballroom manager to service entrance. Footsteps approached quickly down the corridor. I didn't turn around. The ballroom manager stepped through the doors seconds later, scanning the room with practiced precision. His eyes moved across tables. Across the stage. Across the guests. Then they landed on me. For a moment he froze. The change in his expression was subtle. Recognition. Shock. Then something close to alarm. He started walking toward me immediately. Fast. Across the ballroom, my sister continued thanking guests, unaware of the shift happening near the back wall. The manager adjusted his tie halfway across the room. Two waiters suddenly spoke into their radios. A hostess whispered something urgently near the bar. I remained where I was. Still. Calm. Watching. Because sometimes the most powerful position in a room is the one nobody notices. The manager stopped in front of me. His voice dropped instantly into a different tone. Respectful. Careful. Miss Carter, he said quietly. I looked at him. Yes. He swallowed once. I didn't realize you had arrived. I smoothed the sleeve of my coat. It's all right, I said. I came through the staff entrance. His face went pale. And across the ballroom my sister laughed with Daniel's parents in a room she believed belonged entirely to her. They had no idea whose name was on the ownership papers. The ballroom manager's name was Victor Hale. He had been running the Whitmore Grand for 11 years. I knew that because I had read his employment contract during the acquisition review. His performance evaluations were excellent. Guest satisfaction scores consistently above 92%. Staff retention unusually high for the industry. He was good at his job. Which meant he understood problems very quickly. Right now, I was clearly one of them. Victor glanced toward the main entrance, then toward the service corridor behind me. His voice stayed low. Miss Carter. I sincerely apologize. Security should have been informed. I shook my head slightly. They weren't. His jaw tightened for a moment. Across the ballroom, Olivia was still speaking into the microphone, thanking Daniel's parents for welcoming her into such an incredible family. Guests applauded again. Victor followed my gaze. You're attending the engagement party, he asked carefully. My sister's, I said. His eyes flickered. Understanding landed slowly, piece by piece. The Carter name. The Whitmore engagement. The guest who had just entered through the staff corridor. He looked back at me. I see. Behind us, two waiters whispered to each other while pretending to rearrange glasses. Word traveled quickly through hotel staff. Victor straightened his jacket. Would you prefer to be escorted to the front reception area? He asked. I'm fine here. Another pause. Guests near the bar began glancing toward us now. The conversation between a manager and someone they assumed was staff had already gone on too long. Victor noticed it too. He lowered his voice further. Security sent you to the service entrance? Yes. Did they ask your name? They did. His expression tightened again. Across the room Daniel raised his glass to propose another toast. To partnership, he said confidently. To the future. His father Robert Whitmore nodded approvingly beside him. They looked comfortable. Certain. Like men used to owning the rooms they stood in. Victor followed my gaze again. I can correct this immediately, he said quietly. If you'd like. I watched Daniel place a hand on Olivia's back. My sister leaned into him as guests clapped again. No, I said. Victor hesitated. I'd rather observe for a while. The sentence confused him. He studied my face carefully, trying to understand what I meant. Then something in his posture shifted. Not panic. Recognition. He had managed luxury hotels long enough to understand another kind of guest. The ones who watched first. The ones who made decisions later. He nodded slowly. As you wish. A woman's voice suddenly cut through the air behind us. There you are. Victor turned. The woman with the diamond bracelet had returned. She looked mildly irritated now. I asked earlier that staff stay out of the guest area, she said, gesturing toward me. This one seems confused. Victor's expression froze. For half a second he didn't answer. I didn't help him. The woman glanced between us impatiently. Is there a problem? Victor straightened. No problem, he said carefully. She looked back at me. Well, then perhaps she can move along. We have important guests here tonight. Her eyes flicked toward Olivia and Daniel. Victor inhaled slowly. Ma'am. I raised a hand slightly. It's fine. Both of them looked at me. I stepped away from the wall and toward a nearby cocktail table. I was just leaving the doorway. The woman nodded approvingly, satisfied that the situation had been handled. Good. She walked back toward the bar. Victor watched her go. Then he looked at me again, his expression now somewhere between confusion and dread. You're certain you don't want me to? I'm certain. Across the ballroom Olivia finished her speech. The quartet resumed playing softly. Guests began mingling again, forming small groups around the room. One of Daniel's cousins approached me near the table. He looked barely 20. He glanced at my coat and then at the empty glasses on the tray beside me. Hey, he said casually. Could I grab a champagne? I looked at the tray. Then back at him. If you'd like. He took a glass without hesitation. Thanks, he said, already turning away. I didn't correct him. Victor watched the exchange with visible discomfort. You don't have to tolerate this, he said quietly. I know. Two more guests approached the table seconds later. A man in a navy suit gestured toward the tray. Perfect timing, he said. We were looking for drinks. They both took glasses. Neither looked directly at me. I folded my hands calmly. Victor rubbed the bridge of his nose. I can have security corrected immediately. Later. Another group drifted closer. A woman examined the desserts placed beside the champagne tower. Is this gluten-free? She asked me. I'm not sure. She frowned. Well, someone should know. She walked away. Victor looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Across the ballroom Daniel's father began speaking with a cluster of investors. His voice carried slightly as he discussed upcoming expansion plans. The Whitmore properties have always maintained a certain standard, Robert Whitmore said proudly. I watched him. Victor followed my gaze again. You purchased the property 18 months ago, he said quietly. Yes. He nodded slowly. I was informed the buyer preferred discretion. I do. Your sister doesn't know. No. Victor exhaled. And the Whitmores? I shook my head. They never asked. A strange silence settled between us. Guests laughed nearby. Music drifted through the room. At the center of it all, my sister smiled brightly as she posed for photos beside Daniel. The room belonged to them. At least, that was what everyone believed. Victor's radio crackled suddenly. Front desk to ballroom manager. He answered quickly. Hail. A pause. Then the voice lowered. Sir, security is asking about a situation at the front entrance earlier. Victor glanced at me. Handled, he said. Another pause. Are you sure? Yes. He clicked the radio off. I picked up one of the champagne glasses from the tray and examined the bubbles rising slowly through the pale gold liquid. You run a good hotel, I said. Victor looked surprised. Thank you. Efficient staff. He hesitated. Usually. I placed the glass back on the tray untouched. Across the room Olivia suddenly spotted me. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Recognition. Confusion. Then mild annoyance. She said something to Daniel. They both started walking toward the back of the ballroom. Victor noticed immediately. Your sister is coming, he said quietly. I see that. Guests nearby turned slightly to watch. Not because they knew who I was. But because Olivia Carter Whitmore to be rarely walked toward the service area during her own engagement party. She stopped 3 feet from me. Her expression held the same polite confusion she used when encountering a stranger in an unexpected place. Emily? I nodded. Hi, Liv. Her eyes moved over my coat, then the tray beside me. Then Victor standing next to me. You came, she said slowly. You invited me. Yes, of course I did. Her voice softened slightly, but the tension remained. I just didn't realize you were working tonight. Victor's posture went rigid. I didn't answer immediately. Daniel stepped beside her now. He looked at me with polite curiosity. This is your sister, he asked. Olivia nodded. Emily. Daniel extended his hand casually. Nice to finally meet you. I shook it. His grip was confident. The kind of handshake practiced in boardrooms. Congratulations, I said. Thank you. His eyes moved briefly toward the tray. Then back to me. You're helping with the event? Olivia answered before I could. She works in hospitality, she said lightly. Numbers and logistics. I looked at her. She smiled politely. Victor remained perfectly still beside us. A waiter rushed past carrying another tray of champagne. Music swelled again from the quartet. Guests continued laughing, drinking, celebrating. Daniel's father glanced briefly in our direction from across the room. Just long enough to see his future daughter-in-law speaking to someone near the service tables. Then he looked away. Still confident. Still certain. None of them understood yet. But Victor did. And I could see the exact moment he realized something else too. This party. This room. This entire building. Technically belonged to the quiet sister standing beside the champagne tray. And the evening was only just beginning. Olivia stared at me for another moment, trying to arrange the scene in front of her into something that made sense. Her eyes moved from my coat, to the champagne tray beside me, to Victor standing just slightly behind my shoulder. Emily, she said again, softer this time, like she might have misunderstood something. Why are you back here? I didn't answer immediately. Daniel slipped an arm around her waist again, smiling the easy smile he used with investors and donors. Hey, he said lightly to me, no offense, but the staff corridor isn't exactly the best place to catch up. Olivia gave a small laugh. Yes, exactly. Her tone shifted into the familiar older sister voice I remembered from childhood. Patient. Slightly embarrassed. You should come say hello properly, she said. Mom has been asking if you arrived yet. She glanced again at the tray. Did someone ask you to help with drinks? Victor inhaled slowly beside me. I spoke before he could. No. Olivia frowned slightly. Then why are you? Daniel picked up a champagne glass from the tray without thinking. Perfect timing, he said, lifting it toward Olivia. You should have another toast. He handed her the glass. Neither of them asked why I was standing beside the drinks. It simply fit the version of the world they already believed. Olivia took a sip, still studying me. You could have told me you were coming earlier, she said. I would have had someone bring you through the main entrance. I tried, I said calmly. She tilted her head. What do you mean? The guard sent me to the service alley. Daniel chuckled quietly. Well, security can be strict during private events. Olivia waved a hand dismissively. I'll talk to them later. Her attention was already drifting back toward the party. Guests were calling her name from across the room. One of Daniel's aunts waved dramatically. Olivia. The photographer is ready. Olivia turned halfway toward them. Then looked back at me one more time. You should probably step out of the service area before someone mistakes you for staff, she said gently. A small smile. Not cruel. Just certain. I'll find you later, okay? She squeezed Daniel's arm. They turned to leave. Victor cleared his throat quietly. Miss Carter. Olivia stopped. She looked back at him, confused. Yes? Victor hesitated. For a moment I thought he might say it. the truth. But years of hotel management had trained him well. Never create a scene unless the owner demands it. And I hadn't. So he chose a safer sentence. I was just speaking with your sister. Olivia nodded politely. Good. Maybe you can help her find the guest area. She smiled again at me. Then she and Daniel walked back toward the center of the ballroom where cameras and laughter waited. Victor watched them go. His expression had turned completely serious now. They truly don't know, he said quietly. No. He rubbed the back of his neck. That's unusual. Most people don't ask questions when the answers might complicate things. Across the room the photographer began arranging Daniel's family for pictures. Robert Whitmore stood near the stage giving quiet instructions to two men in suits. I recognized one of them from financial reports. Martin Keene, senior partner at Whitmore Holdings. Victor followed my gaze. They believe the property is still under Whitmore management, he said carefully. Yes. And tonight's event. They paid the standard private booking fee. Victor almost laughed. But stopped himself. Which means they technically rented their own ballroom. From me. Silence stretched for a moment. Then a voice snapped sharply behind us. There you are again. The woman with the diamond bracelet had returned. This time she looked irritated. Why are you still standing here? She demanded, looking directly at me. Victor opened his mouth. She didn't give him time. I already asked that staff remain in the service corridor. Her voice carried louder this time. Several nearby guests turned slightly. I met her eyes calmly. I'm not staff. She smiled thinly. Well, you're certainly not a guest. Victor's shoulders stiffened. Ma'am. She raised a hand toward him. It's all right, I'll handle it. Her attention returned to me. This area is for guests only. I'm aware. Then please move. I didn't. The pause that followed stretched just long enough for nearby conversations to quiet. Victor shifted his weight. Perhaps we should. The woman's voice sharpened. Did you hear me? I did. Then why are you still standing here? I looked around the ballroom slowly. At the chandeliers. The floral arrangements. The champagne tower reflecting gold light. I like the view from here, I said. She blinked once. Then laughed softly in disbelief. That's not how this works. Across the room Olivia noticed the tension. Her smile faded slightly as she watched. Daniel followed her gaze. What's going on? He asked. The woman crossed her arms. If you don't move, she said to me quietly, I'll have security escort you out. Victor stepped forward immediately. That won't be necessary. She turned on him. Excuse me? He chose his words very carefully. There's been a misunderstanding. Clearly, she said sharply. Your staff member refuses to leave the guest area. I'm not staff, I repeated calmly. She laughed again. Oh, of course you're not. Daniel and Olivia had started walking toward us again. Guests nearby pretended not to watch. But they were listening. Moments like this travel through a room faster than music. Daniel reached us first. What's happening? He asked. The woman gestured toward me. This staff member has been standing here all evening and refusing to move. Daniel looked at me. Then at the tray beside me. Then back at Victor. Victor said nothing. Olivia's voice was quieter now. Emily, why are you still back here? I folded my hands loosely. I'm observing. Daniel frowned slightly. Well, maybe you should observe from somewhere else. Robert Whitmore began walking toward us from across the room. He had noticed the gathering crowd. Investors followed behind him. Victor saw him coming. And I watched the exact moment tension spread across his face. Because Robert Whitmore still believed this hotel belonged to his family. And in about 5 minutes, that belief was going to collapse in front of everyone he cared about impressing. The woman beside me crossed her arms again. "That's it," she said. "Security." She reached for her phone. Victor spoke quickly. "Please don't." She stopped. "Why not?" He looked at me once. Then back at her. Because he knew something she didn't. And the room was about to find out. Very publicly, the room had grown quieter without anyone formally asking for silence. Conversations didn't stop all at once. They faded. One cluster at a time. Like lights dimming across the ballroom. Robert Whitmore approached slowly through the crowd. People stepped aside for him automatically. He had the posture of a man who expected space to open when he walked. Daniel noticed his father coming and straightened slightly. "Everything all right?" Robert asked as he reached us. His voice carried the calm authority of someone used to managing problems before they became embarrassing. The woman with the diamond bracelet answered immediately. "There's a small issue with one of the staff members." She gestured toward me. Robert looked at me briefly. Just long enough to categorize me. Young woman. Standing near the drinks. Quiet. Staff. His attention moved to Victor. "Handle it," he said. Victor didn't move. That was the first thing Robert noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly. I said handle it. Victor cleared his throat. "Sir, there seems to be some confusion." Robert looked irritated already. "What confusion?" Daniel spoke next. "It's Olivia's sister," he said casually. Robert glanced at Olivia. She nodded. "Yes, Emily." Robert looked at me again. This time a little longer. Not recognition. Just polite evaluation. "Well," he said finally, "family shouldn't be standing behind the service tables." His tone was mild but dismissive. "Why don't you join the guests?" I watched him for a moment. Then I said quietly. "I tried to." He frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "The guard at the front entrance directed me here." Robert exhaled impatiently. "Security can be overzealous during private events." "Yes." Olivia touched Daniel's arm. "Emily, seriously, just come to the main floor." Her voice was lower now, slightly embarrassed by the attention gathering around us. Guests had begun drifting closer. Not obviously. But enough to hear. The woman with the bracelet shook her head. "This is ridiculous." She turned to Victor again. "Why is this taking so long?" Victor's hands were clasped tightly behind his back. He looked at me. Then at Robert. Then at the growing ring of observers around us. "This situation," he said carefully, "requires clarification." Robert's patience was thinning. "Clarify it quickly." Victor nodded once. "Of course." He turned slightly toward me. "Miss Carter." His voice carried just enough to reach the nearest tables. Daniel frowned. "Why are you calling her that?" Victor didn't answer. Instead he asked me quietly. "Would you prefer we continue this conversation privately?" I considered the room. Olivia. Daniel. Robert Whitmore. Half a dozen investors watching closely. And nearly every guest pretending not to stare. "No," I said. "This is fine." The woman with the bracelet laughed again. "Oh good. Then perhaps we can finish this and get back to the party." Victor inhaled slowly. He looked directly at Robert. "Sir. I believe you're under the impression that this hotel remains under Whitmore Holdings management." Robert blinked once. "Yes." Victor nodded. "That changed 18 months ago." A pause spread through the small crowd. Robert's expression didn't change yet. "Whitmore Holdings restructured several properties," he said calmly. This one remained under our operational umbrella. Victor spoke carefully. Operational management, yes. But not ownership. Daniel frowned now. What are you talking about? Victor turned his head slightly toward me. Miss Carter is the current owner of the Whitmore Grand Hotel. Silence landed like a dropped glass. No music. No laughter. Just the quiet hum of the chandeliers overhead. Daniel stared at Victor. Then at me. Then back again. That's not funny, he said. Victor didn't smile. Robert's expression hardened. That's impossible. I folded my hands calmly. It isn't. Robert looked directly at me now. Really looked. The quiet sister standing beside the champagne tray. You're telling me, he said slowly, that you purchased this property? Yes. Through which firm? Carter Hospitality Group. His eyes narrowed. I've never heard of it. That was intentional. The woman with the bracelet looked between us in open confusion. Wait, what? Olivia's face had lost color. Emily. Daniel laughed suddenly. A short, uncertain sound. Okay, hold on. He rubbed the back of his neck. You're serious? Victor answered before I could. Yes. Robert's voice turned sharp. Victor. Yes, sir. If this is some sort of joke. It isn't. Victor reached into his jacket. He removed a thin folder. I brought the documentation in case verification was required. The room grew even quieter. Robert didn't take the folder immediately. Instead, he looked at me again. Longer this time. Trying to reconstruct 18 months of financial reports in his mind. Trying to remember the quiet acquisition that slipped through his attention. Finally, he took the folder. Flipped it open. His eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. The color in his face changed slowly. Daniel leaned closer. What does it say? Robert didn't answer right away. Olivia whispered my name. Emily, why didn't you tell me? I looked at her calmly. You never asked. Another long pause. Then Daniel's voice dropped. You're telling me my engagement party is happening in a hotel you own? Yes. The woman with the bracelet suddenly looked horrified. Oh my God. She turned toward me instantly. I didn't realize. I nodded slightly. I know. Victor stood silently beside us. Robert closed the folder. Carefully. Slowly. His voice when he spoke was much quieter than before. Why keep this quiet? I met his eyes. Because sometimes people behave more honestly when they don't know who they're talking to. No one laughed. Across the ballroom, several guests had stopped pretending not to watch. The truth had reached them already. Whispers moved through the room like wind across water. Daniel looked around at the guests. At the staff. At Victor. Then back at me. You let everyone think you worked here. I didn't correct them. The woman with the bracelet looked like she wanted the floor to open beneath her. I am so sorry, she said quickly. I had no idea. I know. Robert exhaled slowly. The calm businessman had returned. But the confidence was thinner now. Well, he said, adjusting his jacket, this is certainly unexpected. Olivia still hadn't moved. Her eyes stayed fixed on me. The quiet sister. The invisible one. The one standing near the service corridor all evening. Except now the entire room knew something she didn't. This wasn't her party venue. It never had been. It was mine. And suddenly, everyone in the ballroom understood it. For a moment no one moved. The music from the quartet had stopped without anyone asking them to stop. One of the violinists lowered her bow slowly, watching the center of the room with the same quiet curiosity as everyone else. The whispers had begun. Not loud. but constant. They moved from one table to another like a ripple through water. Robert Whitmore still held the folder Victor had given him. His fingers rested against the edge of the paper, but he wasn't looking at it anymore. He was looking at me. Not dismissively now. Carefully. Across the room, one of the investors leaned toward another and murmured something under his breath. Their eyes shifted toward Daniel. Then toward Olivia. Then back to me. Daniel ran a hand slowly across the back of his neck. This doesn't make sense, he said. His voice was quieter than before. Emily, right? Yes. You're saying you bought the Whitmore Grand 18 months ago? Yes. And nobody knew. That was the intention. He gave a short laugh that didn't reach his eyes. My father reviews every acquisition that involves this property group. Robert didn't look away from me. Apparently not everyone. Daniel went silent. Olivia finally spoke. Emily, why? Her voice carried something new now. Not embarrassment. Not irritation. Something closer to uncertainty. You could have told us. I looked at her. I could have. Then why didn't you? I didn't answer immediately. Around us the room waited. Because the question sounded simple. But the answer wasn't. You never asked what I did, I said finally. The sentence landed quietly. Olivia opened her mouth slightly, then closed it again. Daniel shifted his weight. Well, what exactly do you do? He asked. I acquire properties. Robert's voice was calm again, but measured. Through shell corporations. Through holding companies. His eyes flickered with reluctant respect. A clever structure. Efficient. He nodded once. Then glanced around the ballroom. At the very least, he said, this explains why the purchase terms were unusually discreet. Victor remained silent beside us. The woman with the diamond bracelet had taken 2 slow steps backward and now looked like she wished she had never entered the conversation at all. I truly am sorry, she said again softly. I gave her a small nod. I know. Daniel exhaled slowly. So, technically. He gestured vaguely around the ballroom. This entire engagement party is happening inside your hotel. Yes. And we paid you to host it. Yes. A strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Well. He looked at his father. That's awkward. Robert closed the folder completely now. Perhaps. But his tone suggested he was already calculating how awkward it truly was. Because this room contained more than family and friends. It contained investors. Partners. People who believed the Whitmore family still held absolute authority over their flagship properties. And now those same people were staring quietly at the woman they had mistaken for staff 30 minutes earlier. Olivia finally stepped closer to me. Her voice was softer. You came through the service entrance. Yes. The guard sent you there? Yes. She looked at the floor briefly. I didn't know. I know. Her shoulders lowered slightly. And earlier, when people thought you worked here. I didn't correct them. A small silence passed between us. Then she asked quietly. Why? I studied her face for a moment. Because this was the first honest question she had asked me all evening. Because I wanted to see how people behaved when they believed I had no power in the room. The answer made several nearby guests shift uncomfortably. Daniel looked around the ballroom again. He could feel it now. The attention. The curiosity. The quiet judgment. His father spoke again, calm but firm. Well, Robert said, this has certainly been enlightening. He extended the folder back toward Victor. Victor accepted it carefully. Robert turned to me. You've made your point. I wasn't trying to make one. His eyebrow lifted slightly. Then why stay silent all evening? I glanced toward the entrance where the security guard still stood outside beneath the gold canopy. Then back at the guests. Because the evening wasn't about me. Another pause. Robert considered that. Then he nodded once. A businessman's acknowledgement. Daniel exhaled slowly again and looked at Olivia. Well, he said, forcing a lighter tone, at least we picked a very nice venue. A few guests laughed nervously. The tension loosened just slightly. But it never disappeared completely. Because the balance in the room had already shifted. Olivia looked at me again. Emily. Yes. I'm glad you came. The sentence sounded sincere. But also careful. As if she was still adjusting to the new version of me standing in front of her. I nodded. So am I. Daniel lifted his glass slowly. To unexpected partnerships, he said. Several guests echoed the toast. Champagne glasses clinked again. The quartet began playing softly once more. The party restarted. Conversations resumed. But they sounded different now. Quieter. More cautious. Victor leaned slightly toward me. Would you like me to arrange a proper table for you? He asked. I shook my head. No. Anything at all? No. I stepped away from the champagne tray. Guests moved aside instinctively as I passed. Some nodded politely. Others avoided my eyes. The woman with the bracelet gave me a nervous smile. I walked slowly toward the large windows overlooking the city. The lights outside stretched across the skyline like scattered gold. Behind me the party continued. Olivia laughing again. Daniel greeting guests. Robert speaking quietly with investors. But the tone had changed. Because now they all knew something they hadn't known before. The quiet sister they had overlooked. The woman they had mistaken for staff. The one who had stood silently beside the service corridor while they celebrated. She had owned the room the entire time. I watched the city lights for a moment. Then Victor approached again. Miss Carter? Yes. The security guard asked if you'd like the front entrance cleared when you leave. I thought about that. Then I shook my head. No. Very well. He waited a second. As always, thank you for your discretion. I nodded once. Then I picked up a single champagne glass from a passing tray. Across the room Olivia looked toward me. Our eyes met briefly. No anger. No triumph. Just understanding. I raised the glass slightly. Not as a celebration. Just acknowledgement. Then I said the only thing that needed to be said. I think the party is going quite well.